The Crystal Pool, Myths and Legends of the World by Geraldine McCaughrean, illustrated by B. Willie. In the very highest heaven, Papa Io prepared 3 presents for the human race. He took 3 baskets, and into one put peace and love. Into the second he put songs and spells. Into the third he put help and understanding. The people of Earth would need all of these if they were to get along with one another successfully. And Papa Io knew all about the importance of getting along. He had 2 sons, Tane and Wero, who could no more agree than fire and water. He had put Tane in charge of light, Wero in charge of darkness. The job suited their temperaments perfectly, he thought, for Tane was all brightness, kindness, and goodness, while Wero, although Io wept to admit it, was gloomy, evil, and dangerous. Naturally, when the 3 baskets were ready, it was easy to choose which son should deliver them. Io stuck his head out heaven's parapet and called through his speaking trumpet, "Tane, come up here. I need you to take these gifts to humankind." Now Wero knew full well that whoever delivered such fine presents to the people of Earth would win them hearts and mind. They would never stop thanking or praising the messenger. The thought of praise appealed to Wero. So while Tane climbed the great Tower of Overworlds, story by story, up the ladders that led from one floor to the next, Wero set off to climb the outside of the tower. Like ivy, like a fat black spider creeping silently up a wall, he raced his brother skyward, determined to reach the top first. In his pockets were all the tools of his trade, all the tricks that would give him the advantage. It was slow going, but by the time he reached the second story, Wero found Tane was already on the third. So out of his pocket he pulled handfuls of mosquitoes, sandflies, and bats. "Kiss my brother for me, my dearios," he said, and flung them in the air. Unsteadily balanced on the ladder between worlds, Tane was suddenly engulfed in a cloud of flying black particles. They flew in his eyes, his ears, his mouth, and up his nose. He bent his head down against the swarm, clinging to the ladder with one hand, while with the other he fumbled in his pocket. At last he tugged out a twist of north wind as big as a towel, and waved it around his head. The insects and bats were swept by a frosty gusting gale miles out to sea. So when Wero, climbing the outside of the tower, reached the third story, Tane was already well on his way to the fourth. Wero put his hand in his other pocket and drew out, like a fisherman's maggots, a handful of ants, centipedes, hornets, spiders, and scorpions. "Say hello to my brother from me, sweetlings," he said, and threw them in the air. Halfway up the next tall ladder, Tane heard a crackling and was suddenly vilely beset by creepy crawlies. They swarmed through his hair, infested his clothing, they stung his bare arms and cheeks and calves. Feeling in his pocket, he found no rags of wind, nothing at all to swat them away. There was nothing he could do but shut tight his eyes and mouth and go on climbing. Higher and higher, from the 8th to the 9th to the 10th story. Gradually, the air became thinner, pure. The holiness emanating from the magic realms above filled the upper stories with a glorious perfume. The disgusting, crawling creatures began to fall away, overcome like mountaineers succumbing to altitude sickness. Outside, on the wall of the great tower of the overworlds, even Wero began to flag. His arms and legs ached. His fingers could barely grip. When he looked down, his head swam at the dizzying drop. He could never make it as far as the 11th story before Tane. Spotting a small window on the side of the tower, Wero slipped through it, feet first, and found himself on the 9th floor. Very well, if he could not catch Tane on the way up, he would ambush him on the way down. Hiding himself in the shadows behind the ladder, he settled down to wait. In the uppermost overworld, welcoming hands helped Tane from the ladder and led him before Papa Io. And there, while pink evening clouds drifted between the white pillars of the highest heaven, Io entrusted his 3 precious presents into Tane's keeping. "Give them to humankind with my love and blessing," said Io, "and tell them to watch out for that infernal brother of yours. He's a tricky one, that Wero, though I weep to say it about my own son. Carefully, Tane started back down. The baskets balanced neatly on top of one another. The perfumes of highest heaven were heady, and he was feeling a little light-headed as he stepped into the ladder from 10th to ninth overworld. He had only one hand free to grasp the rungs now, and he could not properly see where to place his feet. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his ankle and wrenched him off the ladder. He fell, the baskets tumbling on top of him, on top of Wiro, who was just then sinking his teeth deep into Tane's thigh. There in the darkness they fought, good and evil, sparks and foulness spilling from the folds of their clothing. Their panting breath spread the clouds across the evening sky. Against a blood-red sunset, the tower of the overworlds trembled and rocked, while the birds screamed around its shaken frame. "Help! Murder! Ambush!" Wiro was rested. He liked to fight, liked to inflict pain, whereas his brother was naturally a gentle soul. But Tane knew, as his brother's hands closed around his throat to throttle him, that if Wiro once got hold of the baskets, he would either spill them or use them to take control of Earth and its people. He slapped feebly at his brother's chest, but there was no pushing him away. He reached out a hand across the creaking floor. His fingers brushed a fallen basket. The lid came off and rolled away into the darkness. A wordless song and a single magic spell spilled into Tane's open palm. Suddenly, a sacred magic warmth crept up his wrist and arm, into his aching muscles, inspiring him to one last effort. Pushing Wiro backward, Tane toppled him over the edge of the hatchway, and thud, down into Overworld 8. Crash, down into Overworld 7. Bang, down into 6, and 5, and 4, and so, by painful stages, all the way down to the stony earth. He was not killed. Immortals don't die. And the whole episode did not serve to sweeten his nasty temper. Picking himself up, Wiro snarled, "Not deliver the baskets? Well then, I shall make humankind some presents of my own. Sickness for one, crime for another, death for a third." And he slouched away to find baskets big enough for all the miseries he had in store. Tone delivered the 3 baskets safely to the people of Earth. So after that, they were armed against anything Wiro could hurl at them. The only lasting damage was to the tower. Shaken and rocked by the titanic struggle on the 9th floor, its rickety structure teeters now, condemned, on the world's edge. It could not carry the weight of the smallest child, let alone the great bulk of Papa Io coming down from the sky. So humankind are on their own now. They will have to make do as best they can with what the gods gave them. If you enjoyed this story and would like to hear the whole book, please follow the links in the description box below. And as always, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.